Before we get into something, I want to talk about the connection between YBI and your guy's family. His dad was the star of Motown Mafia.
Available on Tubi.
And everything, except Netflix because they don't pay. They were the big fellas of the 70s. Your dad went in 77, got out in 84. But before we get into that, let's detour to a quick story about the Westies and your father, believe it or not. The Westies were the Irish mob out of Manhattan, lunatic assassins. Shout out to the guys on 6 Mile, but they were doing hits for the Gambinos, and they were just killing people on their own. Had a very treacherous, bad reputation involving taking people's lives for little to no reason and little to no money. But your dad found himself in the same federal correctional institute as his behavior was being corrected, and you were like a senior in high school. And by this time, you guys were still, living definitely upper middle class, but you weren't rich
anymore.
Mom had started some businesses, and that's really what the money was coming from. The money from the 70s was gone, but one day that changed.
So as Pops recalls the story, there was a guy named Jerry, a Sicilian guy, who was like the...
What joint was he in?
This is in Milan now.
Okay.
Well, actually, he met Paulie in Atlanta, and then they both got transferred up to Milan. Because, that's they send you away. When you first go away, they send you far away
but
from
USP
home.
Atlanta's hardcore.
USP Atlanta, and especially in the 70s.
That's where like the Aryan Brotherhood first was doing murders. That's where they had all the French Connection.
Yeah, Vince Papa was down there with him. Actually, him and Vince got cool right before they actually whacked Vince Papa.
Vince Papa was from the French Connection.
And the rest of the French Connection crew.
And like 4 of them got killed in 2 weeks at Atlanta.
Yeah, he was.
No, there was 9 murders at Atlanta in like 2 months. They cleared the decks of the French Connection.
Crazy story. Guy comes in.
And then the head of the French Connection got out early when Reagan came in. But that's another story.
Right, yeah. I was going to say the canary in the mouth story. Pop's talking about some guy they let in who was on that French Connection case. He got to Atlanta at noon. By 3 p.m., they had already put the canary in his mouth.
And he
was out of there within 3 hours once he got to Atlanta.
So that's where they considered him one of the more dangerous people in the country. I mean, in terms of power. Potential power.
And he was down there with your man, Ike Atkins was down there. Him and Ike did time on that, on the Sergeant's Mag. But anyway, so he Popson made friends with this guy, Paulie, who's the conduit, as you kind of just said. He knew the Gambinos. He knew the Genoveses. He wasn't a made man himself because I think he was only half Sicilian.
And half Irish or something?
And probably because when they get to Milan, Paulie cuts in them and says, O'Leary and the crew want to holler at you. Pop just minding his own business.
Getting ready to go home.
Get ready to go home. And he like, O'Leary and the crew want to talk to you. They said, they want to talk tomorrow in the library. Pop's like, him and Polly's solid, so he's like, whatever, yeah. They cut into him and they say, you the big man's man, right? Pop like, who you talking about, Eddie? He said, yeah, that's my man. They say, I think we got some mutual friends. He's talking about Doc, Carmine Lombardozzi.
Ooh.
He's talking about Carmine Lombardozzi.
Back in New York, who was serving
Eddie. Same world. So he's like... And
Mickey Beckwith
and
Frank
Matthews, number 2, who did... Him and Pop got cool down in Atlanta, too.
Oh, okay.
So he like, yeah. Same people. They like, well, let me... They checked with whoever was going to be okay to make sure it was okay for them to start this business enterprise. And so the Italian guy, O'Leary, tells them, let me just run this by my Italian friends. Make sure everything.
Or the Irish guy, O'Leary.
The Irish guy, O'Leary, says, let me run my plan by some of my friends back in New York. If everything is everything. He comes back and tells Pops that it's like those guys speak very, very highly of you. So here's the thing. If you got some people outside, I got a bag. He didn't say a bag. They didn't use that word back then. The package was already in Boston.
Now, I wonder why we wouldn't know this now, but were those guys just not, they weren't known for being drug dealers, but they might have had access to stuff, but why couldn't they dump it on the East Coast? Could it have been, they took it from somebody, or no telling?
Now that you say it and with time, I think you're right, it was a gypsy bag, because when Pop and the crew ran through, like, the 10 bricks.
That was it.
That was it.
It wasn't really a plug. They had a load.
They had, and
they were known for taking and killing.
Because they didn't have to re-up. They never kept it going.
So it was 10 bricks.
10 bricks.
And that's a lot of heroin. What would that be? By the time something like that hit the street in, what was this, 82?
This would have been 82.
What, I mean, roughly, if when that goes to dimes, I mean, what is it, $1 million a key, $500,000 a key?
I mean, shit, wholesale, put a 5 on it. Put a 5 on it, wholesale.
What was the wholesale? 80?
80. So, right, that's what I'm saying. So you put a 5 on it, right? And then you can still wholesale it.
At what? At how much each?
The same 80.
Oh, and then it's still getting broke down. So it might be more like 1.5 million. Or something.
When it was all said, it was a good run. It was a good run.
So what was your, like, how did you know that? Because you told me something about how you were sort of vaguely involved in terms of picking up money or.
Not really on that because I'm still in high school.
Or they were knocking on the door.
But it's a couple of the OGs actually still kind of active, so I cannot. But like God rest his soul. And to the big homie over there off 12th, that Davidson 12th exit. You know, I will never forget the kindness you showed me in working with Pops, making sure that my high school days went by. The big homie over there know who he is. Assalamu alaikum and alaikum salam. God rest his soul, John the Baptist. A lot of Pops crew really.
John the Baptist.
John the Baptist.
That's a dope name.
Yeah. So yeah, all of a sudden, once Pop gets this thing, and all he's, when we go up to visit, he's like it's like things gonna be a little bit better. He's like, a senior trip was coming up and shit like that, graduation. He like, don't even worry about nothing. Everything gonna be everything. And I'm like, what you mean when you get home? He like, nah, you gonna be good just last year of high school. Don't even worry about it. All of a sudden, I can say shout out to Jerry, the Boyer family, and all them. Jerry, the Baptist, and the big homie from over there. They'd just start knocking on the door, and they'd be like, "Your mom home?" Sometimes she would be, sometimes she wouldn't be. He'd be like, "This from your pops." Look in the bag, $50,000, $30,000. It's like, all of a sudden now it's back like when we was growing up. I got allowance again. We are no longer shopping at the sales rack at Hudson. We back in downtown Birmingham. You know what I'm saying? Shit got back nice. Car and all the other little amenities. My sister hadn't went to Europe yet. My sister was getting ready, but then they was able to send my sister over to school.
Sister who became a lawyer.
Yeah, they was able to send her for a master's degree over in. She got a master's over in Europe.
Oh, and so if you're in another country, you're not getting financial aid or a scholarship.
No, it was.
So that was Westie's money.
That was Westie's money, and
educated a young black woman in Europe.
Young black woman. Yeah.
World is an interesting and complicated place.
At the same time. But the Westies was plugged. I mean, yeah, but now that you say it and how that run ended,
it wasn't.
It was what they call a gypsy load. They had come across these 10, however they got them.
Yeah. And probably didn't want it, because I'm sure they had people that could have sold them on the East Coast, but they didn't want anyone to know they had them probably.
I mean, they in Boston. They got
New York, Boston, or Philly, Boston alone.
Boston alone, and it was the bag was right.
Yeah.
But they didn't want it. No,
they needed someone in another heroin city, of which there, was the East Coast, and then it was Detroit. I mean, there weren't a lot of heroin cities back then. Like
Detroit, Chicago. That you really that you knew you could put the bag in and it'd be turned into money
fast
in a few months.
Yeah, that amount too, right. Millions and millions of dollars.
And it's only a handful of guys, because this is a credit deal, and the guy you're giving the credit is in prison. Yeah. So your Pop's credibility
that'd be through the roof.
Yeah, because I'm giving the guy the bag who's locked up. So I'm completely dependent on his word and his organization and his knowledge.
And he's been gone for 7 years at this point.
Yeah.
So no problems that you know about. Yeah.
No. I mean,
well, that we can mention.
We was just talking on that that whole Milan thing again. The big homie I'm talking about over there. Assalamu alaikum. He was up there. Demetrius was in Milan. I just saw the big homie KK. Shout out to the big homie KK. That shit was Wakefield was up there. Eddie O'Man there too. Muhammad, who becomes the Pakistani plug. He in Milan too.
Okay, so now let's walk into that. Okay, so Eddie and later your dad was serving some of the former YBI people, but that plug came along. So take us through that library once again in the library, but there was something in Chicago. Tell us that story.
Okay, so he meets Muhammad, who's in federal penitentiary for narcotic smuggling.
You don't say.
Yeah.
What country was he from?
Pakistan.
Oh, Pakistan. Okay.
Pakistan. But now the thing is, so this is in the mid 80s they meet. I mean, early 80s they meet.
So this would have been right after the Westie thing or around the time, or hard to say? Or this was right when he was getting out?
This was right when they're getting out. He's getting out.
So the Westie thing has happened. That took what, 6 months, 4 months?
By the time, that bag was gone by the time I graduated in April. So say the bag hit right before Thanksgiving.
Okay, so 4 or 5 months.
Yeah, the bag hit right around Thanksgiving.
10 bricks.
The crew ran through that.
On the street, okay.
They ran through that quick.
And then, so when did he get out? 84.
84.
So he still had about a little less than 2 years left once that bag was done. So then, leading maybe 6 months or something before he gets out, that's when Muhammad approaches him?
Let's get the time right. He doesn't hook up with Muhammad actually for another 8 years.
Oh. Okay, but that was a thing where he had to go to Chicago and they were afraid to grab some.
Right, so, and then shout out and rest in peace to the fat man. So what ended up happening to help us bridge that gap between that Westie bag running out and him eventually getting out, Eddie gets out a year before in 83. And then starts looking out, so it was...
Okay, so tell us that Muhammad, that 92?
92. So they didn't become cool from the joint, right? Vaguely stayed in touch with each other. He gets a phone call. Actually, the story goes, he had given Muhammad, my grandmother, God rest her soul's phone number. She called Pops. It's like, some funny talking guy called here named Muhammad. Say, what time can he call back to talk to you? Pops,
AC?
huh?
Did the AC come on?
I don't know,
I'll just take my shirt off. Okay, so
Yeah,
Muhammad calls.
Muhammad calls. Pop tell him to call tomorrow at 4, right? He tells Pops, I'm gonna be in Detroit tomorrow. Can you pick me up from the train station? Pop yeah, whatever. Pop when he pick up Muhammad the next day. So this like 92. He then just got out because he gets violated in 89. Has to do 18 months. When they run up in this place on 6 Mile, they find a gun.
Pops.
This is following that Bahamas action. It was a lot going on, family, back in the day. There's a lot going on. My father and his friends, that clicked right there, man. So anyway, Muhammad's like, brother, you have to help me get to Canada. I have to go back home. But here's the thing, that's what he always called Pops, was brother. He say, brother, but my Iranian friend, he got pinched in Chicago. Another 10 load. He's like, but this one, he's got 10 untouched Lebanese bricks, 90%. Muhammad says, I don't think my man, the Iranian guy, he says, I don't think he flipped on us. He's like, but I can't take no chances.
Because he just got out.
He's like, I got to get to Windsor. You got to help me get to Windsor. I got to get back to Pakistan. He gives Pop the address, location of where these suitcases are at in Chicago. He says, brother, if you can get them, we split it. Pop I don't know, man. Yeah. It might be hot. This show could be a suicide, bro. Yeah. And Muhammad was emphatic, though. He was like, I think my guy's stand up.
But he can't make no guarantee.
He's like, I think he's stand up, and Pop all right, check it out. I'm gonna put together a crew. We're gonna go check it out. I ain't gonna make you no promises. Rest in peace again, John the Baptist, Ernie, Donald. It was a white boy that hung out with Donald. I don't even know what his name was, but he was a soldier. Actually, the white boy was the hero. It's about a 6-man crew he takes to Chicago. They camp out for a day, just checking out the apartment building. Pop say after a day, he ain't seen nothing. You know, Pop by this time, he been around the block and around the block and around the block. He like, this joint ain't under no surveillance. He like, this spot ain't hot. He like, tomorrow morning we going there, we going in there and get that. Now, he can't tell the crew that they going to get 10 bricks, though. He tell them there's some suitcases in there with a whole bunch of jewelry.
Why doesn't he just...
He didn't want to know. He didn't want
It's
to
too
know.
much money.
It's too much. Yeah. People start thinking all kind of crazy, all kind of crazy shit. He tells them that it's a lick, though. And these all street guys.
Yeah.
They like, you know, Berman, as they call him, you know. They like, Berman, we always coming across some licks.
Yeah.
You know, and he like, it's a lick. He's like, you know, it's a few $100,000 worth of jewelry in there. My man, yada, yada, yada. He spends some story. Like, we just got to grab the bag, get back to Detroit, fence it. We're going to be able to eat good. They still a little bit leery, and his pop said that it was the white boys like, hey, Mr. Brown, man, fuck this, man. You say it ain't hot. What we just doing all this watching for? Let's go grab this shit and get back to Detroit. Pop's like, here go the keys. Go in there, they grab 3 suitcases. Hit 94. No issues. No. And I was living in New York at the time. And literally, as soon as they got back to Detroit, I happened to just be calling to check in. And those infamous words, Pop is like, I'm going to tell you something, boy. Don't worry about nothing.
Don't worry about nothing.
And then I'm just thinking he just talking. And he say, and now that I know, that I see he's starting to talk cryptically, he say, nah, Junior, I'm trying to tell you. Don't worry about nothing. Nothing. We good. That was 6 months later, he would send Muhammad $4 million.
Oh, wow.
So now, though.
That's what they made. So they made $8 million off of the...
Off the 10 bricks? Yeah, because he started...
He broke it down?
He put a 15 on it.
And sold it?
He put a 15 on it. Put a man, Fat Frank, got arrested, sold down in the projects. Brewster's. Eddie on French Road.
Oh.
Eddie was doing... Frank was doing $25,000, $30,000 a day. Eddie was doing $25,000, $30,000 a day.
Oh, so that was the last. That was so you guys.
Then we had
$50,000.
Shout out to Family C. Then we had one guy who was wholesaling. That Pop would actually, because Pop never liked to sell weight. There was one guy that was real close to the family. Shout out again, Brother C out there. You know, he would move half bricks. But again, we put a 15 on it, so that's every that 10 bricks.
So when you say put 15, it's still, before it hit the street, it's still got another 5 put on it or something.
Oh, yeah. Easy. So the 10 turned into 150. Right? We take 10 keys, we put a 15 on it, 10 times 15, you got 150 bricks.
Of heroin.
Of heroin. Better than anything on the streets.
So during that year or so, like, that started a whole run. Oh, so he sends them $4 million, and some more comes.
And now Muhammad back up in the mountains because
he's in Waziristan.
He's right at the border, right at the Afghanistan-Pakistan border.
Oh, where Bin Laden hit out at.
He's up there. They called it the tribal territories, and so his bosses are like, "You're telling me there's a black guy in Detroit? You told him where 10 was at, and he sent us our money, and he sent some money because the whole 4 wasn't just for the bag. It was actually a payment
on some more.
He's like, what kind of, and Muhammad's telling the tribal bosses, I told you, brother, it's different. He's different. He not flat. And the whole time, Pop's driving around this town in like a Nova.
Chevy Nova.
A Chevy Nova.
On parole.
With 150 bricks that he moving.
You mean he didn't get a mink coat and throw money in the air at the strip club?
Levi.
That's not how it's done?
That's how. I mean, we let our hair down a few years later.
You do have a nice mink coat collection.
Yeah, we let our hair down. We let our hair down a little bit. But yeah, that ran from 92 to 97.
Wow. So during that whole time, the operation was, where would it come in the country at?
Mainly Northern Los Angeles, San Francisco, or New York.
And you guys would pick it up there?
Correct.
And one of the times one of your people the load got intercepted?
Twice.
Twice.
We lost Shout out to Schoolyard George, straight up soldier.
So one of your people, he took. I mean, so what? How does not everybody tell? Some people are solid organizations, but when somebody doesn't tell, you got to do something for them. Like, how would that work if someone took the fall for you guys?
I mean, okay, so two different scenarios. One guy, old guy's out here now, still Schoolyard George. Another, him and Papa did time, got cool. Papa and them come from, really, if I didn't do time with you, I don't want to do no crime with you, kind of thing. But both times, it wasn't on our end. It would be Muhammad's carriers would get pinched. They'd roll, and then our people be walking into a death trap. So, same situation. George go out to New York to pick up the bag.
How much was it?
It was a smaller one. It was like a 5. Okay. Yeah. And Muhammad's mule then got popped, and he then rolled. They got the room all set up. George and everybody think, because the way it worked, the mule don't know who Courtney is.
Yeah. He just knows.
And our carrier don't know who Muhammad is. Yeah. And that's how Pop gets us protected and Muhammad is protected, right? Because all that mule knows is somebody's going to come, and all our people know is when...
And all the mule can tell on is someone in the tribal area that they can't go get is meaningless, yeah.
Yeah, right? So, George get popped on with the 5 bricks. We have told the story. George's old school guy, he spent most of his life in jail. And he come from down there, Homestead, Miami. Hardcore, would kill a rock for the old man and might kill anybody else just because he from that ancient times. Yeah, so when the feds pop him...
Oh, but he's living in Detroit now.
He's living in Detroit right now.
Oh, y'all gave him a house or something, right?
Okay, anything we could do, it was done. Yeah. He tell the feds, can y'all do me a favor? Send me someplace warm. He's like, y'all know I ain't, look at my jacket. And to the feds' credit, they didn't even sweat it too much. They was like, give him his 20, man, and let's keep moving on with this.
So
this guy ain't talking.
So in like 95, he got 20 years or something?
He got 20, so he did about 16.
So when did he came on, like 2011?
Right around then. Wow. Right around then. And of course, we looked out for him.
You say he get a little pension now and then?
Always.
Man.
And then... Cassandra.
So if you don't take care of people when they get in trouble, it's all well and that theoretical not snitching stuff sounds good, but like when you leave people out to dry, should it be a shock that they roll on you?
So in his case, because he's just ultra hardcore,
he wouldn't have anyway.
He was like, save your money, Courtney. Don't put me no lawyer because it ain't happening. You ain't gonna come across these kind of people no more. Yeah. He like, no, I don't need no lawyer. Make sure my commissary's straight. Make sure my people's straight. And when I come home, you got me, right? But even when Cassandra, a woman who was one of our main...
This was the second time, or a
different time in Cali.
How much you get hit with?
$850,000 in cash, picking up 7. I don't know why the accounting was the way it was, but she had 8.25 in cash on her. And she was supposed to be picking up 7. On this one, Muhammad did kind of get to us and say, no, the agents ask her, where's the rest of the money? Because by this time, I think the ticket's like 1.6 or something. And she's got 800. And the agents ask, where's the rest of the money? And so she calls the old man. It's like, he's asking for the rest of the money. And the old man's like, oh, no, something's fucked up here. Get out of there. And she knows it's the truth. She's like, fuck that, Courtney. I'm here. I'm bringing this shit back. She continued to do the transaction.
Oh, so she could have kind of...
She could have walked out.
Probably got in some type of trouble because she had the money, but not that much.
We go to Goldfar's. Pop say, you got a lawyer out in L.A. Because you got to always hire a local lawyer.
Yeah.
And shout out to the Goldfar's. Chuck, rest in peace, Irving. Chuck said, no, I got some top-notch people. It's a narcotics case, I assume, Courtney. He's like, yeah, it's a narcotics case. He's like, all right, we got some top-flight narcotics lawyers out in L.A. That cost us another $3.5.
$3.5? Oh, wow.
That would be $350,000. 90s money. To
like
put him
$1 million now.
To put him on the case. It was a bullshit. I mean, they had her dead to right, but they just had her on the money.
If she hadn't have kept on with it.
Right. They got her 5. They got a 5 on that year. They got it down to a 5-piece.
Boy, you get 5 years for 5 grams of crack, or you used to. So for 7 kilos of heroin.
Conspiracy, yeah. They got the conspiracy knocked down to just transport, and then she copped out on the money laundering, and they ran it together.
Now, did the feds weren't able to kind of trace back and be like, we know you guys came from Courtney Brown?
Yeah, she spun him a little bit and blamed it on her brother, who was a very, very low-level criminal who by this time is doing time in Jackson. Oh, okay. And she weaved this story. Because they knew. The feds be knowing. The feds told her. They said, you work for Courtney Brown. Mm-hmm. And how steely-nerved was your father must have been? Because even when these things get lost, they just set up another load, right? Well, of course, yes.
I mean, you got to be nerves of stone.
They was hard. They criminals. They is hard.
Hardened criminals.
They are hardened criminals. I love my old man. I said sometimes he should either get Dad of the Year or contribute to the delinquency of a minor. Yeah. But those guys are hardcore. They never even think of like
it's just what we doing.
Like we in trouble. We should stop. No.
So he's paying for the lawyer. You're dealing with the fallout of that, and you're still sending the secret communications for. We need another 10.
Buy her the house. Bought her daughter a house.
So that was a $1 million loss between the lawyers and the stuff. And
easy.
Oh no, it was $850 in cash, $3 for the lawyer. So that's 1.1 plus her compensation. So you had 1.5 plus.
3 houses between her daughter and just another relative. 3 new whips when they get home.
Oh, which they got.
Yeah. Plus.
When did Dad go in? The second time?
Pops?
Yeah.
On that case?
Yeah.
That run.
Ongoing.
That wouldn't happen to 04.
And when did she get popped?
No, that was still in the heart of the run. That was like 95, 96.
So when she got out, Pops was still out.
Yeah.
Whereas George got out right around the time your Pops was getting out.
Yeah, exactly.
Because there's a risk, like even if you're a soldier like that, what if while George is doing that 20, Pops gets killed, or he gets a life no parole,
or he
might not come home to nothing just because it ain't like that.
Yeah, but again, it's hard in today's world for the younger audience. I mean, the older guys I know get it. It was some guys cut from that cloth back then. They just
that's what it was.
It just is what it is. We didn't. In fact, Schoolyard George. They'd be at the hookup table and shit, and they used to especially drive Eddie Jr. crazy. Because when we'd be sitting around bullshitting, he'd look at me, Junior, we all going to the jailhouse behind this shit. Niggas getting all this money. You think we ain't going to the jailhouse? And we'd be like, man, would you stop saying that? Oh, I'm telling y'all boys, we all going to the jailhouse behind this shit. And I'm telling you, and he'd be like, man, don't say that no more. But it's the truth. Look at all this money. You think we ain't going to the jail? So going to he was different, but even Cassandra Sean, and you got to know in my case, in all our cases, they know I'm money laundering. They know I'm the one getting the money to Muhammad.
You're part of the conspiracy.
If they,
if it all goes super duper bad, you could get 20, 30 years along with everybody else.
Everybody, and they knew about Eddie. They knew about Big Homie.
And Eddie Senior's back in the joint for his own conspiracy, but long.
Eddie Senior been back in the joint, But they knew about Eddie Jr.
He pass?
In 95.
Oh, so he passed during that time.
He passed right in.
Was your dad and him he must have been in contact, but he wasn't going to see him. That would have been too hot.
They talked maybe every other day on the phone. Okay. I mean, I talked to Eddie on the phone
400 times. Yeah.
Maybe, yeah. Because he was all about to actually think he was going to get out. He got a couple things overturned. But Eddie Jr. and the old man are doing a lot of business during this Pakistani thing. And, if George tells, if Shauna tells, if her mom tells, everybody going to jail.
For a long time.
What about
you?
They used to assure me that I would only get 10 because I had no priors. and I was a college boy.
How
that would be their counsel.
Now
They'd be like, Junior, they only gonna give you 10 because you ain't never been in trouble before.
How shook were you when any of this stuff was happening? Or just because the people around you were so calm and seemed in control, you didn't get that shook? But you had to have been somewhat.
I was concerned.
But you were also in your alcohol and other things.
I definitely
numbing yourself.
I numbed myself a lot to not think about, in this
the gravity of your action.